All right, everybody, we're back. It's the Wildcast podcast. This is Michael Lev, senior writer and columnist for the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com. I have a very special guest today on the podcast. It's Kim Doss of AZ Desert Swarm. Kim covers all women's sports for AZ Desert Swarm. She is one of the foremost experts in the world on Arizona women's basketball and Arizona softball. And those are going to be the primary topics that we discuss today. Kim, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Lev?
I'm doing okay. Very busy time right now. The men's basketball team will be hitting the glass floor in Kansas City tomorrow. We're recording this on Wednesday. They open play on Thursday. So we've got that going on. I'm working on this project on Desiree Reed-Francois that I've been procrastinating about for quite a while now, but coming up on a deadline, and we all know how those things motivate us journalists out there. But we're going to talk women's basketball and softball today. The first half of the pod will be kind of a review of the women's basketball season, and then the second half will be a preview of the big softball series this weekend at Texas Tech. Let's start with basketball. Just give me your kind of overall impressions of Becky Burke year one.
I think we saw Becky's style playing hard. She's very into detail. She's very detail oriented. I'll put it that way. And I think we saw that in her players and in the way she subs. If a player's not doing what she wants, she's not going to be on the floor for very long, and she may not play for days. I think that's what we get most from Becky, is that you have to follow her instructions to the T is what she wants.
Yeah, I would agree. I wouldn't say that I went into this season with huge expectations for what the results were going to be because of how late in the game she arrived, how she had to cobble a team together so quickly after the portal had opened already. They have changed the schedule for the portal windows this year for the better, I think. They're not opening until after the national championship is decided, right? So right. April 6th would have been probably a little bit different ball game for Becky if that had been the case. But like 2 weeks or so of the window being opened, I mean, everything is pretty much picked over. So, she was scrambling to put the team together, putting the staff together. All that being said, do you feel like the expectations that you had were met? Did they, do about as well as you thought? Could they have done a little bit better?
I expected them maybe not to lose those 2 games in non-conference. So I expected them maybe to go in without those 2 losses. But as far as conference play, I went in expecting 3 to 6 wins, and that's with Mickey Purdue. Once Mickey went out, I think the 3 was more realistic than the 6. So in that regard, as far as wins and losses, absolutely, she met my expectations.
Yeah, I think the timing of Mickey's injury couldn't have been worse because it came right before a home game against a beatable UCF team. And that, if I recall, and I could be wrong because I didn't attend every single one of Becky's post-game pressers or listen to all of them, but she was really upset after that game. Like she felt like that was a game that got away, that they really should have won. I think maybe the only comparable one was maybe at Cincinnati where, she made some decisions about players, discipline-related stuff, and didn't play people. But they had kind of the same consistent problems all season long. They were undersized. Rebounding was a huge issue. They didn't have that many scoring options when Mickey was healthy. And then after she went out, they were even more limited. They had some players who did certain things well, but not necessarily having that all-around game, where you can count on them on both ends of the court. So I don't know. I thought she basically did the best with what she had.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I think when you come in, especially with a few older players who have done things the same way for 6 years now, there may be some things that they're just going to do and you can't correct them at this point, so you live with what they do well and you try to get over the things they don't do well and just do the best you can with it. Because really, if you've been through 3 or 4 schools over 6 years and you've seen a bunch of coaches, you've kind of decided this is how you're going to play.
I will say though, she did kind of have some breakthroughs with Mickey before she got hurt. Like, remember that one game where Purdue, she took like 3 or 4 charges.
Right.
And I don't know if she played a lick of defense before she got to Arizona. Right. So Becky, she was breaking through with her at least, but you make a good point. I mean, it's tough sometimes when players have been around for that long. It's easier to mold young players into the image that you have for what an Arizona basketball player should be. What about the way that Becky kind of handled herself in post-game situations? I found it to be pretty unpredictable. Like, sometimes she'd be kind of happy after a loss if she felt like they did what they were supposed to do. And then sometimes after a win, she'd be mad at them because they weren't doing some of the things that were in the game plan, or they didn't play with the effort that she wanted. She definitely was not what I would call like even keel during those. So what did you think?
I go back to when I covered Dave Rubio in volleyball, and he wanted them to win doing things the right way. It wasn't necessarily result oriented. It was process oriented. And he could be harsh in the things he said as well. So it didn't come across as odd to me because I've been around those kinds of coaches. But I mean, I think she learned as she went on, because I don't think she had been in a situation where she had as much attention on her and her program. It's different to coach Arizona women's basketball than coaching at Buffalo. Just the sheer media attention that you get locally on your program.
Yeah, and her previous stops before Buffalo were pretty low profile as well, right? One of the schools was Charleston, and I had to figure out which Charleston is that? Where is that school? What level is that? She was at USC, but not that USC or that USC, but USC Upstate. And she started out at Embry-Riddle, which is this tiny school up in Prescott that didn't even have a basketball program. So yeah, this is definitely the biggest spotlight that she's been under. But the upside of that, I think, and I fully believe that she felt this because she's talked about it, but the fans, the amount of fans, the amount of interest in this program is so great. Much credit to her predecessor, Adia Barnes, for kind of establishing that and setting this baseline of 5,000 or 6,000 fans at every women's basketball game at McHale Center, which is a lot. And so I think she understands that she stepped into a different situation. There could be some challenges inherent in that, but there can also be some really nice benefits. And that's the interest that the fans have.
Oh, absolutely. And, the fans didn't go away just because they didn't get the results they wanted. And that was what impressed me the most. Maybe you see them come in at the beginning to see, what it looks like. But even when they didn't get the glory, they were still there. And that's what impressed me the most.
I was on the road when they faced Arizona State in that Saturday afternoon game. What was the crowd like for that one?
It was almost 9,000. So it was huge.
What did it feel like in the building?
There was a lot of energy, and especially with it being overtime and all of that, there was energy till the end. And then, of course, ASU always buses in a bunch of their students. So there was that energy too. It was definitely a rivalry game.
Yeah, all three games against ASU really truly could have gone the other way. They were all super close, came down to the end. As mentioned, everybody or most teams had a couple week head start in the transfer portal versus Arizona. Molly Miller was hired roughly 2 weeks before Becky Burke was. So, she got the jump and she got some really good players, and they had a little bit more size and a little bit more depth and a little bit more athleticism. And Arizona could play with ASU for about 36 minutes. And then, you'd see the separation at the end. So as we head into the first real off season for Becky, I mean, last year was a partial one. We've already got some changes that are known and some that are unknown. There's going to be turnover within the coaching staff. General Manager Michelle Marciniak has stepped away. She made an announcement that she's going home to take care of her mother, who has Alzheimer's. This is someone who is very close to Becky, recruited her to South Carolina back in the day, and then there was a coaching staff change, and Becky ended up at Louisville. It was actually Dawn Staley who came in to South Carolina, and she's been there ever since and done amazing things. But they posted 3 openings for coaches on the Arizona job board. Tell us, what do you know about that situation at this point?
What I know, and this doesn't come from the department, it's from outside sources. The department won't comment on who's leaving, but Ashley Odom, associate head coach, is leaving. And Jenna Knudsen, who played for Becky at Embry-Riddle, was as an assistant coach, and she will have a different role next year. At one point, they had posted the director of basketball operations position, but that was taken down. So I don't know if that's where Jenna is going, or whether they're hiring, whether that was a mistake that they put that out there. But it was very coincidental that it went up and then went down around the same time.
What do you make of the fact that there are this many changes to the coaching staff? Some might look at it, oh my gosh, there's internal turmoil at Arizona. On the other hand, the general manager clearly had a very specific set of circumstances that has led her to step away. And just as, she had to scramble to put the roster together last year, it was kind of the same deal with the coaching staff. So to me, It's not surprising that there would be a little bit of a shakeup or some changes, even after only 1 year.
No, it doesn't surprise me. And in general, a turnover in women's basketball doesn't concern me that much. I mean, a lot of these coaches are when they leave, they're looking for a step up. They're looking to take over their own program, or they're looking to be somewhere that pays more. So, even during Adia's time, when there was concern about the turnover, it never was for me. And there isn't really for me here. I think the staff probably needs more Power 4 experience on it, because her initial staff did not. The only one who had it was Ashley Odom. Everyone else was either out of basketball or they coached at smaller schools, that sort of thing. So, when you're in this arena, I think it helps to have a little bit more experience, especially if the head coach doesn't. If she's learning about Power 4, it maybe is helpful to have another staffer or two who has that experience. So in that sense, I think it could be a positive.
Sure. Regarding the personnel side of things, we're still about 3 weeks out or so from the start of the official opening of the transfer portal. There have not been any announcements by any U of A players as of yet, but we always hear rumblings about this or that. And there's been a trickle, I would say, of portal entries far across the country, usually kind of tied into coaching changes. And man, there've been a lot of coaches who've been fired since the end of the regular season in women's basketball. But what are your expectations about roster retention? How many girls are going to be back? How many might leave? Any idea what those numbers might look like, or who those people might be?
I mean, where I sit right now, there's only 2 that I feel really, really comfortable saying that they'll be back.
Okay.
Just from playing time, from the way Becky talks about them, from who she puts out there to talk to the media, that there are 2 that I'm pretty certain will be back. And then the rest, I think.
Hold on. Who are the two? Who are the 2, Kim? You got to name names here. Come on.
Molly and Samaya. Molly
Okay.
Ladwig and Samaya Sugapong. These are the ones Becky's talked about building around.
Okay.
These are the ones that have been in the media most often in, as far as people who have eligibility. Especially over these last, 3-4 weeks, maybe, especially the last 3, I'd say. So those I feel pretty comfortable about. And everyone else is a toss-up to me. I really couldn't say.
Yeah, I never assume anything when it comes to the transfer portal. Like it's a dangerous game because you really truly never know what these kids are thinking, what they're like, the people who are in their ear, what they might be telling them. Sometimes they'll portray a certain image to us in the media, and things are a little bit different behind the scenes. They might say they love the coach when they really don't love the coach, or the coach might say they love them and the coach really doesn't love them. I would put Montea Dew in that group also, although I don't know if she's ever going to play basketball again.
Yeah.
She's sort of in her own sort of satellite category.
Right. Yeah. I forget about Montea because she wasn't on the court, But no, I don't think Montea, if she was going to leave, I think maybe it would have been last year. I hope she's healthy and is able to play basketball again. And that's my biggest question about Montea. It's not, whether she comes back to Arizona, because she's been pretty, she's got a support system here, and she's been very, that's one reason she stayed, because she's got that support system personally here. So, with her, it's more, will she be able to play rather than, that's my thing with her.
Yeah. So of the 12 players on the roster, 3 of them are out of eligibility. That would be Mickey Purdue, Noelani Cornfield, and Nora Francois. That leaves 9 players. And we've mentioned 3 of them. One of them, who in Montea Dew, has a special set of circumstances. The way I have totally recalibrated the way I view what a successful retention looks like these days. To me, if you can bring back half of your roster from the previous season, you're doing pretty well, right?
You're doing really well.
I don't know if they're going to get there either. That would mean 6 of the 9 would be back, and that might be a little bit. That might be on the optimistic side, but if they had 4 or 5, I think that's pretty good these days. Right. And also let's consider the context and the circumstances here, right? It's not like she had long-term relationships with many of these players. A handful of them she had recruited to previous schools, Molly Ladwig was a Buffalo commit, right? And Denia Trammell was a Buffalo commit. So there are a couple cases where that was the relationship, but otherwise, it was speed dating. So,
Cameron Kitchen, she did at one time try to commit, but then she got too, she blew up, and so Buffalo wasn't, someplace she was going to go.
Right. Yep, that's right.
Yeah. But other than that, you're right.
Yeah, and Cam is someone who showed promise during the middle of the season and then basically didn't play at all down the stretch. Very talented scorer, probably needs to get bigger, stronger, and improve her consistency of defensive effort, I guess I would say. And so I don't know. There's a lot yet to be decided about what this roster will look like. We do know that they have 4 incoming freshmen, correct? One of whom is already here in Callie Hinder, who's
and then there is an unannounced international.
Oh, okay. Breaking news here. What you got for us?
Yeah, Becky actually brought it up maybe the last couple weeks of the season, that they have a committed international who they usually sign in April. Internationals just do that. They're later announcers. Not really sure who it is. I know that there was some mutual interest between them and a Polish player. That might be her, but I have no idea.
All right.
For sure.
Still international woman of mystery coming
Yep.
coming Arizona's way. So that would be okay. So if that's the case, that's 5 players
Right.
right there who are presumably freshmen, international players. Sometimes they can be a little bit older
Yeah.
or
Oh,
something, but
she's
would be
20.
classified.
If it's this one, she's 20.
Okay, but would still be classified as a freshman?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so you got Callie Hinder. You've got Jasleen Green, Michaela Presser Palmer, and Priyanka Panam. Just give us, you spend a lot of time, you study these players, you look at their clips. Give us like a little scouting report on the incoming freshman.
Well, I think Jasleen is going to give us a lot of athleticism to cover, and I think that's one of the biggest needs they have. Pri is kind of she can be a stretch 4. She's played probably she's at that level. They play more inside, but she's she can shoot as well. Now Callie has got a lot of size, but she's very slight. She needs to put on strength, and that's why it was a good thing that she came in early, because she's got legitimate height, but when you see her, she's not a big young woman. And then Michaela's a scorer. She comes from both she and Jasleen come from like smaller schools. So you have to take a little bit of their scoring, high school scoring, in that context. But they are high scorers, that's what they've done. So they bring in some offensive punch. So that's pretty much my take on the 4 of them.
Okay, so we know that that's who they have coming in, plus the unnamed international player that you referenced. We're estimating maybe, let's say 3 or 4, maybe at best case 5 returning players from the current roster. So if my math is correct, we're still then looking at 3 to 5 or so portal acquisitions. Yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And again, not knowing exactly who they have coming back from this year's team, but if there were positions or certain areas that you feel like are the biggest needs for the team in the portal, what do you think they should go after?
They need a big who can rebound and defend. Not just score. I mean, scoring, sure, it's always a plus. You got to score points, but defense, I think they had some issues inside with that. I think Nora was very good. She didn't get the stats that everyone loves, but you could see her deflecting balls. If other people, their steals were a lot of times Nora's deflections. So I think they need someone who can do that as well, who is very active with their hands but doesn't foul. They've got to have scoring. Becky talked about getting a shifty wing, that being her biggest, area of need. But she said those are kind of pricey, so we'll see.
You could say that if Blessing Adebanjo comes back, that she could be that defensive force inside. She's very athletic. She has great timing when it comes to blocking shots. Whether she executes her assignments all the time is another matter. And she's also very foul prone, which was a huge problem for Chol Magat as well, who just couldn't, she got limited minutes and she kind of made the most of them in that if she touched the ball, she was probably going to try to score. And if she was on defense, she was probably going to foul somebody. So she got her money's worth. You could also say that Tanyelle Welch is a shifty wing. If she were to return, a very good athlete. Again, the consistency wasn't always there, but she was, someone who is willing to do the dirty work a lot. A very good rebounder for someone who's, maybe 5'10", maybe 5'11" at the most, and pretty slightly built as well. Interesting to see what that is going to look like. Do you have any idea what the budget is? Like how Arizona compares to maybe others in the Big 12 as far as
You know,
revenue sharing, NIL, etc.?
Well, with NIL, a lot of their NIL last year was either Brea Cunningham or Jada Williams, and Jada's was her thing. It wasn't Arizona. It came in with her. So I doubt that big chunk has been replaced, but as far as NIL, I mean, that's a hard thing to say because they don't really there's never really been a big push for women specific NIL in Arizona. We kept being told that it was in the works, and it never happened. As far as rev share, I believe they get around 2% of whatever. Now, it's not, people say it's 2% of that 20.5. It's not. It's 2% of 15.5 because 5 of that goes towards Austin money and towards roster expansions, the scholarships. So they get whatever the 2% of 15.5 is probably their budget, and then it will go up next year. Not the percentage, but the amount is supposed to go up based on revenue. Whatever the NCAA figures out as far as revenue streams. So that I would have to do the math, but it's about 2% of whatever that budget is.
Would that be, let's see if I'm doing this correctly here. I think that would be $310,000.
About that,
Does
yeah.
that sound about right? Okay.
Yeah, sounds about right. And you can spend that on one big.
I think that, and I haven't asked this question specifically of the guys over at football, but I think they're operating under this kind of, I don't know, restrictions is not really the right word. This type of, I guess, just financial reality. There's a Moneyball kind of element to certain sports within the NCAA, right? Like Arizona women's basketball is probably an example of that. Arizona baseball might be an example of that too. I don't think Arizona men's basketball is playing with the same set of rules. They have a lot of money available to them, and they can go out and get big time players. But when you're in that kind of circumstance, you need to be a really good judge of talent, right? You need to kind of find those hidden gems. And I feel pretty good about Becky's ability to do that, along with James Ewing, who's her primary recruiter, and Julie Braze Hairgrove, who, I mean, talk about someone who's like knows what a good basketball player looks like, right? I mean, she spent like 20 years coaching in the WNBA. So I feel pretty good about the staff's ability to suss that out.
Yeah, and Becky has talked too that, they have to be able to play for someone like her who's very intense. So they need to be a good judge of character. And that's, in my view, talent is easy to judge in the portal. Character is not. You can ask around, but how honest are people going to feel they can be? Just not how honest are they, but do they feel they can be? I think that's the biggest problem with the portal, is seeing if they're going to fit your culture.
That's a great point. It's an absolutely great point. And she has said that to us even. She's like, right. I'm not for everyone. Like, not everyone can play for me. So it really does take a special person to be able to, deal with just how tough it's going to be, because you're going to get coached really tough. All right, last question on women's basketball before we transition over to softball. They went 12-18 this year. They were 3-15 in the conference. If you look at Becky's track record, there's usually a leap in year 2. What do you think is a realistic record? Not knowing very much about what the roster is going to look like at this point, beyond the freshmen and some players we suspect might return. But like, what is a realistic step forward for the Wildcats in 2026-27?
I think you shoot for 500 or just over, because I think they could have been close this year. Now, we are seeing that they're actually going to have a few more challenges in non-conference, which I'm very happy about. We know they'll be playing Stanford, which isn't the Stanford of Tara Vanderveer, but it's still a solid program, you know.
Better than anyone they faced this non-conference schedule.
Right, exactly. Right. And so, you know, you may take a couple wins off the non-conference, but we saw how close they were in so many of those conference games. I think they could get a few more of those to offset and end up right around that 500 to, you know, just one over 500 type thing.
I said it was going to be the last question, and it was the last question, but I have a theory for you that I want to throw out before we move over to softball, and that is beyond, let's say, the top, I don't know, 8 or so, maybe 10 programs in the country. I don't think the gap is that great between like 11 through 150. You know, like I don't think it's that hard to get up to that level. I look at like the run that Kansas State made in the women's tournament in Kansas City last week. Like Arizona beat that team, and then they went out and pulled a couple of upsets. West Virginia won the women's Big 12 tournament. I mean, like, there's no reason if West Virginia is as good as they are that Arizona can't be as good as they are within a couple of years, in my opinion.
Right. You know, Mark Kellogg has done a great job with West Virginia. You know, seeing them, I mean, they've been consistently ranked. And then the big win, I mean, no one expected them to beat TCU. So I do think that you can get to that level pretty quickly. And as far as K-State, that's home court for K-State. When you go there, they like bust kids in, and I mean, their games are the draw at the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City. So it was great to see them because they have been inconsistent this year, but it was also, you know, kind of home court for them.
Yeah, and it should have been home court for Iowa State, really, too.
Yeah.
And they ended up losing to Arizona State. And you said that outcome didn't surprise you very much. It surprised me because they have, you know, the big time players like Audie Crooks, Jada Williams, what's her face?
Addie Brown.
Brown is back from injury, right? So
yeah, I actually think Addie's their best player. You know, they don't play much defense. So if you're a good defensive team who can shut down their scoring, then you're a threat to Iowa State.
All right. So let's shift our attention to the Arizona softball team. They have a massive series coming up this weekend. They're visiting number 2 Texas Tech Friday through Sunday. All the games can be streamed on ESPN Plus. Arizona is red hot right now. They have won 8 games in a row, all of them by run rule, which was a program record tying.
Tied, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't think they're gonna make it 9 on Friday. I think we're safe in saying that, unless something really, really strange happens. But they're doing really well. They are ranked anywhere from like 12 to 15 in the various softball polls. Some of their, you know, kind of metrics are pretty impressive, like strength of schedule, top 15 according to Massey. They've played Oklahoma, Texas, Stanford, some really good teams. They certainly have not faced anyone like Texas Tech in a while. They did not face anyone like Texas Tech during this homestand that they just completed. What are your impressions of the softball team so far this year, and do you think they've got a shot to maybe stun some people this weekend?
You know, I would be happy if they picked up one win, if it was like a 2-1 series, just because the circle at Tech is not just NiJaree anymore. They got Caitlin Terry from UCLA, and while Arizona beat her last year at UCLA, she was one of the best pitchers available. She's also a very good hitter. She's hitting over 500 and playing right field. She makes them a stronger team, more consistent, where they don't have to just throw NiJaree out there every day, and they don't have to say, okay, we're this middle game where NiJaree's not throwing, whatever. They could put Caitlin Terry out there and expect to sweep, on any given day. So as far as Arizona going up against them, I have liked that we've seen a little bit more consistency in the hitting. I've liked that they're starting to settled in with Kavanaugh as a DP, because she wasn't hitting much very early in the season. She was mostly pinch hitting. And I think they need her power in that lineup. Because, outside Sydney Stewart and Grace Jenkins, it's not a real powerful lineup. So that pop they need. So I think we're seeing a team that runs more this year, and I want to see if that still goes on with these top opponents, because in the past they would steal bases during some of the non-conference and then that would go away. But with the makeup of this team, I think they really need to do it because of that relative lack of power related to previous years. I've been really pleased with Addison Duke. Left field was a real concern when Dakota Kennedy left. And I think she's been a great defender, and she's been a lot better offensively than, well, we didn't know what to make of her because she didn't get to bat much at Ole Miss her freshman year. And she's impressed, being kind of that secondary leadoff down there in the 9-hole. So I've been very pleased with some of the question marks that I had. I've been pleased with the answers to them.
Yes, regarding your thought on stolen bases, of course, as the old saying goes, you can't steal first. So they need to get on base in order to set up those base stealing possibilities. They have some very high OBP players at the top of their lineup with Reagan Shockey and Serenity Trice. Serenity Trice has been everything they could have hoped for and more, coming over from Iowa State and really upgrading that second base spot. Right. Reagan Shockey just gets kind of better every single year. She's a stud. Just the classic fast slap hitter who can cause a lot of damage. You mentioned Addison Duke batting at the bottom. So they have those kind of three in a row in their lineup who are all pretty similar in their approach. They don't have quite as much power as we've become accustomed to in recent years. We thought going into the season that Emma Kavanaugh was probably going to be the main left fielder, and they'd have these two ex-catchers in the corner outfield spots, but they obviously valued what Addison Duke could bring from a defensive standpoint. And she's been a decent offensive player too. I think the biggest surprise from an offensive standpoint is probably Taylor Beal.
Oh, right? Yeah.
She started out. So this is a, all defense team caliber shortstop, senior leader of the team. And she started out the year, I think, batting like 7th, 8th, or 9th or so in the lineup. She's now batting 3rd. And she's got a couple home runs. I like the fact that she doesn't wear gloves. She doesn't wear a face mask. She doesn't even have a C-flap on that helmet. Like, she's like getting ready. She's one of those players, I think, who just loves being on the dirt. And playing the game the old school way. But did you see this coming from Taylor on the offensive side?
I did not. The thing about Taylor is she does the little things like moving runners over, and that's why Kate always valued her offensively, even though the batting average wasn't there, that sort of thing. And that's what she's doing in that 3-hole is, even if she doesn't get on, she's moving Taylor and Serenity over for Sydney Stewart behind her. And that's, I think, not only that she is doing well, but that they've put her in that 3-hole where traditionally you would have Sydney Stewart there. I think that's what has really surprised me the most. And she's flourished. It's been a great move. But no, I didn't see it coming from Taylor, just because she seemed to be the kind of player that, okay, if I'm not hitting a lot, that's fine, because I'm a great defender. But now it seems like she's taking pride in that part of her game and realizing how important it is. and she's got just so much confidence that I didn't expect.
Yeah, she's also in a great spot, right? Batting third in that lineup, Reagan Shockey and or Serenity Trice are going to be on base all the time, and you've got a player, a prodigious power hitter in Sydney Stewart hitting behind you. So you're going to get some, you're going to get pitches to hit in those situations, right? Like that's just how softball works. That's how baseball works when you're in that spot. But to her credit, she has taken advantage of those opportunities. I mean, she's hitting 406. She's got 4 homers and 32 RBIs. Those 32 RBIs are second on the team behind Sydney Stewart's 43. So great job by Taylor showing that she's more than just, a defense first shortstop. Getting back to Texas Tech, not only did they add Caitlin Terry this past offseason, they added Taylor Pinnell. They brought over from Tennessee, right? Third baseman. They did not rest on their laurels after being the national runner-up last year. They were super aggressive in the portal again, adding to their team, bringing back NiJaree Canady, who's the best pitcher in the sport. They seem like a legit national title contender. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't think there's really a lot of them. I think it's them, it's Texas and Tennessee, maybe. I don't even see, we've seen some cracks in Oklahoma this year. They're still going to be at home, in the College World Series, and you never want to count them out. But, it's really looking like those 3 teams are the top of the sport.
Yeah, so we're talking about the elite of the elite, and Texas Tech being in that category is, it's been written about and talked about aplenty. The investment that they've made in that sport, going out and getting Canady is kind of the jumping off point, and then continuing to invest and continuing to bring in players. So I agree with you. I think if they can win one game down there, that would probably be considered a successful weekend. Their strength of schedule will continue to be tremendous. I like that Massey Ratings does a future strength of schedule too, incorporates that in, and they're still in that kind of 14-15 range with that. That will do wonders for their NCAA tournament resume when the time comes. I think the ideal scenario for Arizona is to again be a host for an NCAA regional, and they're on track for that. We never know how the rest of the season will go. We have not talked about the pitching situation for the Wildcats. It's kind of a 2-woman show, really, with Jalen Adams, the senior transfer who came over from Iowa, and a freshman, Riley Holder. Now, Riley recently took a comebacker that kind of hit her in the temple, broke her face mask, obviously went into the concussion protocol. Did Caitlin have a concrete update on her yesterday?
She did not. Her words have just been day to day, is what she tells us. It was really scary in person. But Riley seems, she's still out there in uniform. After the game, she's still in the huddle with the pitchers, and Christian Conrad, the pitching coach, they do a debrief. So she's still actively engaged in everything that's going on. Just no way to know if she'll be back this week. She was wearing some very, very dark glasses, so I don't know if she's having some light sensitivity or not. But they were extremely dark on Sunday.
Well,
or Saturday, yeah.
Yeah. Brent Brennan, the football coach, he always says that none of the decisions of whether to play a player are in my hands. They're in the hands of the trainers. In a situation like Riley's, she's just going to have to go through the protocol and take all of the steps. And no matter how important this series is this weekend, it's not more important than her health, her long-term outlook. So they will, I'm sure, err on the side of caution. Now, if they don't have her, that really puts you in a bind.
I think
because she's if she's not number 2, she's maybe even better than that. She's 1B to Jalen Adams 1A. And it's frankly, a pretty steep downgrade, I think, to the next 2, Janae Berry and Sarah Wright. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Um, you know, Riley actually has better stats, but that's, not taking into account that Jalen has done the bulk against the toughest teams on the schedule, And to be honest, I think that's why Jalen's been pitching in some of these blowouts is to try to help her, with those stats. Because you want your players to get recognized when they're doing hard things, and she's not going to be if she only pitches against the toughest on the schedule. But I think if they don't have Riley this weekend, that they may just go with Jalen every day, or they start Janae in that middle game, but she's got a short leash. I think we'll see a lot of Jalen.
Yeah, and she's proved that she can be a workhorse, but
yeah,
the more that the opponent sees the same pitcher, like the easier it is.
right.
You want to break it up. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but ideally, if you have let's say two really good starters, you probably want to go with the number one on Friday and Sunday and put the other one on Saturday. And then you can bring in your number two as a reliever, and you can do some stuff with matchups, and it just really, it limits them if they don't have Riley this weekend. And they started the season without her as well because of an injury situation. And she's been good. She's lived up to the hype as a true freshman coming in, someone that they were counting on to be, one of the anchors of a pretty, limited rotation in terms of numbers, right? There's only four of them. So, there aren't that many options to choose from. I think the biggest, go ahead. Yeah.
No, even last year when they had 8, when it came down to it, only 2 ended up with qualifying numbers as far as innings pitched, Devin and Miranda. So, maybe it's, you want her healthy, but maybe it's for the best that they don't have all of these pitchers who are not happy with their situation.
Yeah, I think when I had Kenzie Fowler on to preview the softball season, she said that the sweet spot is probably 6.
Yeah.
So they had 8 last year. They have 4 this year. Maybe you could get, maybe next year they'll have, 5 or 6 pitchers that they feel good about. Last kind of overarching question about softball before we wrap things up here is, I think people, when they look at Arizona right now, they feel like, of course they can beat up on the bad teams, right? That's what we just saw here on this homestand, right? They're beating Eastern Illinois and Long Beach State and Howard, and BYU, which is in the Big 12, but is a lower echelon team in the Big 12. And when they go up against the elite teams, they're not at that level anymore. Do you think that is a fair assessment?
Yeah. I do. I think they can always put it together for a few games, like we saw beating Oklahoma and leading Oklahoma. They really should have won that series. They should have won that third game. Beating a team that's like around 20, like Stanford. But when you get up to those teams in the top 5, I don't think Arizona is a threat to those teams anymore. And
that's a harsh reality.
Yeah, it is. It is. Everything has to be perfect for them to be able to beat those teams. And, in the sport, it's not perfect, It's very, very hard to do that, to be perfect in everything.
Yeah, it takes having like 1 or 2 elite pitchers, and it takes having, a certain level of monetary investment. And I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive either.
No.
It's really hard. They're like, it's like the elite quarterbacks in football. Like there's only a handful of them and everybody wants them, and that drives the price up.
Right.
So that puts you in a tough situation. That being said, like you said, like any given day, they're capable. They beat a good Stanford team at their place. It was a bit of a weird game. I think they only had 1 hit in that game, which was a home run. But
yeah,
good pitching and good defense will go a long way. And they did beat Oklahoma once out of 3 games, and they could have, they blew a lead in the 3rd game, so they could have won that one as well. So I don't know. I feel like expectations are high for this program, but it's probably unrealistic if you're thinking they're, going to be in the College World Series every single year like the old days, because just the sport has changed, and everyone else has come up.
Right.
Too,
Even in the final years of Mike Candrea, I mean, they went almost 10 years without going to Oklahoma City. It's not about even who's the coach, because a lot of people do try to put the blame on Caitlin Lowe. But this was a reality even under Candrea. And he's one of the greats in the sport.
Of course. And people, of course, have a hard time accepting that and processing that. But, the sport has changed. The world has changed.
Yeah.
And it's about trying to figure out where you fit into that. It was, of course, unfortunate that, they lost Dakota Kennedy and Kaya Altmaier in the portal this last year, but that's part of that reality, right? Like, there are some deep-pocketed programs out there that are going to take those players away sometimes.
And it's not just about the rev share, because not everyone is doing rev share in softball. Arizona is, but it's the NIL piece that really makes a difference. Having the big spender throw $1 million at a pitcher, or a couple $100,000 or whatever. That's the big difference, I think.
Yes, of course. And you have less control over that, but sometimes, hey, coaches, they can take it upon themselves to go out and kind of recruit those people to help them out. I know that baseball is making efforts in that regard, to just, go out into the community and see who's willing to contribute to the cause.
Right.
Anyway,
and
so
volleyball does too.
Go ahead.
Volleyball does as well. Rita does a lot of that, just networking, to get things she needs, whether it's the floor for her team or, NIL to keep a player here, or, whatever. She's recruiting people to help.
Yeah, and that floor is very cool. They had, there's some wealthy people who have an interest in that program who contributed, right. And that's sometimes what it takes too. It's like it's building those relationships, having those connections, etc. And you kind of have to have you got to go out and do it on your own in some of these lower level sports. And I think the coaches who are successful and accept that are the ones who are going to endure, and the ones who aren't are the ones who decided, I don't want to do this anymore, and they're getting out of the business altogether, or they just make a lot of excuses for why they're not doing well. So anyway, I want to thank Kim Doss for joining us today on the Wildcast. Let me get there we go. There's the applause. You can find Kim's work over at Arizona Desert Swarm. It's azdesertswarm.com. They do a great job over there of covering every single prominent Arizona sport. Kim is very passionate and about women's sports, and covers the softball team, women's basketball team, and even volleyball and some other sports more thoroughly than anyone else you will find out there. We thank her again for joining us today. You, of course, can find the Wildcast on Apple, on Spotify. There's a video version that I will post at Tucson.com. We will try to get Bruce Pascoe on the show. I know he's going to be super busy, but I think Arizona is going to San Diego, and they're opening on Friday. So there should be a window where I can get Bruce on to talk men's basketball and talk NCAA tournament. That, of course, not in the cards for the women's team this year, but hope springs eternal, and maybe next year. Kim, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you
today. This was really fun. Hopefully we can do it again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lev.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time.